Daniel Reeves stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his Italian silk tie for the third time. The morning light filtered through the frosted glass window, casting geometric shadows across the marble countertop. At 38, he had built everything from scratch. A tech company valued at $40 million, a house in Westchester that had been featured in Architectural Digest, and what he believed was a marriage that others envied. His reflection showed a man who had made it. Sharp jawline maintained by 5 a.m. gym sessions with his trainer, eyes that had closed deals worth millions and opened doors to boardrooms across the globe, and hands that had typed the code that launched his first startup in a garage 12 years ago. The Patek Philippe on his wrist, a gift to himself after the first major acquisition, caught the light as he made the final adjustment to his tie. "You're going to kill it tonight," Jessica called from their walk-in closet. Her voice carried that particular melody that had first captivated him 8 years ago at a tech conference in San Francisco. "The Hashimoto deal is practically yours. Just remember, they value relationships over numbers. Let Tom handle the spreadsheets." He smiled at her voice, the same tone that had convinced him to take a chance on love after swearing off relationships to focus on his company. She emerged wearing a black cocktail dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, her blonde hair twisted into an elegant chignon that exposed the neck he'd kissed goodbye that very morning. The diamond earrings he'd surprised her with last Christmas caught the light, and even after all these years, she could still stop his thoughts mid-sentence. "Just drinks with Tom and Marcus," Daniel said, catching her hand as she passed. Her skin was soft, recently manicured at the spa he'd booked for her birthday weekend. "We'll go over the final points of the merger. The Japanese are particular about face-to-face meetings before signing. Should be home by 10:30 at the latest." Jessica's lips brushed his cheek, leaving the faintest trace of her signature lipstick. Chanel Rouge, he knew because he'd memorized everything about her. "I'll be at the office late anyway. The Henderson audit is killing me. These numbers won't reconcile themselves, and the senior partners want a preliminary report by Thursday morning." "The Henderson audit?" Daniel frowned slightly. "I thought that wasn't due until the end of the month." "Timeline got moved up," Jessica said quickly, busying herself with her laptop bag. "You know how it is. Client wants what the client wants. Anthony's breathing down everyone's neck about it." Anthony Blackwood, the managing partner at her firm. Daniel had met him at several company functions. A distinguished man in his early 50s who commanded respect and commanded even more billable hours from his team. "Want me to have Carla send dinner to your office?" Daniel offered, referencing his assistant who had become something of a family friend over the years. "That new sushi place you like delivers until midnight." "You're sweet, but I'll grab something from the cafeteria." She collected her laptop bag, the designer purse he'd surprised her with last Christmas, a Herm S that had required a 6-month waitlist, and her keys to the Mercedes SL 500 parked in their 3-car garage. "Don't wait up. This might be an all-nighter." Daniel watched her leave, the click of her Louboutin heels on their Italian marble floor echoing through the foyer. Something flickered in his chest, not quite suspicion, but a whisper of unease he couldn't name. Jessica had been working late frequently over the past few months. The Henderson audit, the Morrison acquisition, the quarterly reports, the Yang Industries evaluation. There was always something demanding her attention past midnight. He pushed the thought away. Trust was the foundation of marriage. Jessica had never given him reason to doubt. She was ambitious, driven. It's what had attracted him to her in the first place. At that tech conference 8 years ago, she'd been the only person who understood his vision before it was profitable, who'd stayed up until 4 a.m. discussing scalability and market penetration with the same passion most people reserved for sports or entertainment. Their wedding had been perfect, 500 guests at the Westchester Country Club, a 10-piece band, flowers flown in from Holland. Jessica had been radiant in a Vera Wang gown that cost more than most people's cars. His mother had cried. Her father had clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Take care of my little girl." he'd promised he would. Chapter 2. Building an empire. Daniel arrived at his office at Reeves Technologies by 7 a.m., as was his custom. The building, a converted warehouse in the trendy part of downtown, hummed with the energy of innovation. He'd signed the lease when he had 3 employees and a dream. Now, 312 people worked across 4 floors. Their collective brilliance focused on revolutionizing how financial institutions processed international transactions. "Morning, boss," Linda, his head of security, called out as he passed. "Coffee's fresh, and Tom's already in conference room A with the Hashimoto files." "Thanks, Linda. Any fires I need to know about?" "Nothing that can't wait. Oh, and happy anniversary." Daniel paused. "Anniversary?" "8 years since you incorporated. January 15th, 2017. You hired me the next week, remember?" He smiled. "Best decision I ever made. Well, second best. Marrying Jessica was first." Linda's expression flickered for just a moment, something Daniel would remember later. Of course, Jessica's a lucky woman. The morning flew by in a blur of code reviews, strategy sessions, and preparation for the evening meeting. Tom Chen, his CTO and best friend since MIT, had prepared a presentation that was nothing short of brilliant. Marcus Rodriguez, their CFO, had run the numbers 16 different ways, and they all pointed to the same conclusion. This deal would transform Reeves Technologies from a successful startup to a major player. "The Japanese are impressed by our security protocols," Tom was saying, laser pointer dancing across projected slides. "Their main concern is scalability. They're processing 300 million transactions daily. Can we handle that volume?" "We can handle twice that," Daniel responded confidently. "The new server architecture can process up to 800 million transactions with a latency of less than..." His phone buzzed. "Jessica. Might be later than expected. Don't wait up. Love you." He frowned slightly. That was the third "don't wait up" text this week. But the Hashimoto deal required his full attention. He typed back quickly. "Love you too. Good luck with Henderson." The rest of the day dissolved into preparation. Daniel was in his element, solving problems, optimizing solutions, building something from nothing. This was his gift, his calling. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, he was ready for anything the Japanese delegation might throw at him. "You sure you don't want to change?" Marcus asked, eyeing Daniel's slightly rumpled shirt. "I've got a spare in my office." "No time," Daniel said, grabbing his jacket. "Besides, Hashimoto-san values authenticity over appearance. He once told me he distrusts men whose shoes are too shiny, means they spend more time on appearance than substance." The drive to Capitol Grill took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. Daniel used the time to center himself, running through the key points one more time. This deal would mean everything, not just financially, but as validation that his vision had merit on a global scale. He thought about calling Jessica, sharing his nervous excitement, but decided against it. She was deep in her audit. He'd tell her everything when he got home. If only he'd known that by the time he got home, everything would be different. Chapter 3. The Capitol Grill. The Capitol Grill resided at the intersection of power and privilege, a cathedral of capitalism where deals that shaped the city's skyline were hammered out over dry-aged steaks and bottles of wine that cost more than minimum wage workers made in a month. The MA trainee recognized Daniel immediately. Success had its privileges. "Mr. Reeves, your usual table is ready. Mr. Chen and Mr. Rodriguez are already seated." "Thanks, Philippe. We're expecting 2 more, Mr. Hashimoto and his translator." "Of course. I'll send them over immediately upon arrival." Daniel made his way through the restaurant, nodding to familiar faces. Judge Morrison, who'd presided over their incorporation. Diane Walsh from the Chronicle, who'd written their first major press coverage. Anthony Daniels from First National, who turned down their loan application 5 years ago and now called monthly hoping to manage their accounts. The booth commanded respect, a corner position that allowed for privacy while maintaining visibility. Tom and Marcus had already ordered appetizers and were deep in discussion about neural network applications. "Gentlemen," Daniel said, sliding in beside them. "Ready to make history?" "Ready to make money," Marcus corrected with a grin. "History is just the bonus." They laughed, the easy camaraderie of men who'd built something together. Tom had been there from the beginning, coding in Daniel's garage, surviving on ramen and dreams. Marcus had joined 2 years later, bringing financial discipline to their creative chaos. Together, they'd turned a napkin sketch into a company worth $40 million. "Hashimoto's flight landed an hour ago," Tom reported, checking his phone. "Should be here any—" He stopped mid-sentence, his expression shifting. Daniel? What? Isn't that Jessica?" Daniel followed Tom's gaze across the restaurant. The world seemed to slow, like a film dropping frames. His brain processed the image in fragments, unable to accept the whole. Jessica, her red dress, the dress from their anniversary. The one she'd modeled for him in their bedroom, spinning like a girl at prom, laughing when he'd said she looked like a movie star. The one she'd hung carefully in their closet, saying it was too beautiful to waste on anything but the most special occasions. She sat in a booth near the back, partially hidden by a carved wooden partition that separated the main dining room from a more intimate section. The candlelight caught her hair, making it glow like spun gold. She was leaning forward, engaged in conversation, using the hand gestures she made when explaining something she was passionate about. But it was her companion that made Daniel's blood turn to ice. The man was tall, distinguished, with silver hair that spoke of expensive grooming rather than age. He wore a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and a Rolex that caught the light every time he moved. His hand rested on the table, and covering Jessica's hand, their fingers intertwined with casual intimacy. "Daniel?" Marcus's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel's mind raced through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. Maybe it was a client, maybe it was innocent, maybe he was misinterpreting. But even as he grasped for explanations, his body knew the truth. The way Jessica tilted her head, the way she looked at this man, God, the way she looked at him. Like he was the sun, and she was a flower seeking light. He'd seen that look before. In their wedding photos, in their honeymoon videos, in the mirror when she used to look at him. "Gentlemen," Daniel said, his voice surprisingly steady. "I need to handle something. Give me 10 minutes." He rose with the fluid grace of a man walking to his execution, his phone sliding from his pocket in a practiced motion. 3 taps activated the recording function. His lawyer's voice echoed in his memory. "Document everything in business. Evidence is king." The advice, it seemed, applied to more than mergers and acquisitions. Each step across the restaurant felt both eternal and instant. Daniel's mind processed data points with the same clarity he applied to debugging code. Jessica's bare ring finger, the intimate angle of their bodies, the bottle of champagne in the ice bucket beside their table. Crystal, the same champagne from their wedding. The way she laughed at something the man said, throwing her head back to expose the throat Daniel had kissed just that morning. Chapter 4. The Shattering. "Working late on the Henderson account, baby?" The words cut through their bubble like a surgical scalpel. Daniel watched the transformation in real time, like a program crashing. Jessica's face went through a cascade of expressions: surprise, recognition, terror, and finally, the particular pallor of someone watching their life detonate in real time. The man, Anthony Blackwood, though Daniel hadn't confirmed it yet, jerked back as if burned, his hand retreating to his lap like a guilty thing surprised. "Daniel! This is... We're just..." Jessica's voice fractured, searching for words that could reshape reality, that could transform what was clearly a romantic dinner into something innocent. Her hand went to her throat, a nervous gesture he'd seen 1,000 times, but never in this context. "What are you doing here?" Daniel pulled out a chair with deliberate calm, the scrape of wood on wood unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet of their corner of the restaurant. He sat down like a man taking his place at a board meeting, all controlled power and contained fury. The phone in his hand continued recording, its red light a digital witness to the unraveling of 8 years. "Please, don't let me interrupt," Daniel said, his voice carrying the same tone he used when firing underperforming employees, calm, controlled, devastating. "I'm fascinated to hear about this work dinner that requires you to hold hands. Is that a new company policy? I must have missed the memo. Does HR know about this innovative team-building exercise?" The man straightened his tie, a nervous gesture that confirmed his guilt more than any confession. "This is a misunderstanding. We were simply discussing." "A misunderstanding?" Daniel's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. It carried across the restaurant, causing heads to turn. "Let me see if I understand correctly. My wife tells me she's working late on the Henderson audit. I find her here, in a restaurant that charges $300 for a steak, dressed for the Met Gala, holding hands with a man who clearly shops at the same stores as Richard Gere and Pretty Woman. Which part am I misunderstanding? Please, educate me." Jessica's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass, nearly knocking over the champagne flute beside it. "Daniel, please, not here. We can talk about this at home." "Not here?" Daniel signaled the waiter with the same gesture he used to close million-dollar deals. The young man approached with the careful steps of someone sensing danger. "A bottle of Dom P. Rignon. The 2008 if you have it. We're celebrating my wife's promotion. Or is it a new project?" He turned back to them, his smile razor-sharp, the kind of expression that had terrified competitors in boardrooms across the city. "I'm confused because she told me she'd be buried in spreadsheets until midnight. Unless that's a pet name I'm not aware of? Is that what you call yourself, sir? Spreadsheets?" The waiter, sensing drama of the highest order, practically ran to fetch the champagne. Other diners had begun to notice. Conversation stilled. Heads turned. The Capitol Grill, breeding ground of discretion and whispered deals, was about to host dinner theater of the most exclusive kind. "Sir, the Dom Pérignon, the 2008, yes. Nothing but the best for my wife and her colleague, superior, client." Daniel extended his hand across the table to Anthony, his movement deliberate and challenging. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I'm Daniel Reeves, the husband she apparently forgot to mention. You know, the one who pays for that red dress she's wearing. The one who bought her that perfume I can smell from here. The one whose bed she left this morning after kissing me goodbye." Anthony didn't take the offered hand. His voice was cultured, careful, the voice of a man used to controlling courtrooms and boardrooms. "Anthony Blackwood. And as I said, this is simply a misunderstanding. Jessica and I were reviewing. Blackwood. Blackwood." Daniel made a show of thinking, his finger tapping his chin in mock contemplation. "Where have I heard that name? Oh, yes. Managing partner at Hartley, Blackwood and Associates. The firm where my wife works as CFO. The Anthony Blackwood who's been mentoring her. The one who insisted she needed those weekend strategy sessions that kept her away from home. Tell me, Tony, can I call you Tony? Is this what mentorship looks like in your firm? Because I've mentored dozens of employees, and I've never felt the need to hold their hands over champagne." Chapter 5. The Public Crucible. "Daniel, you're making a scene." Jessica's whisper carried the desperation of someone watching their carefully constructed life collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, recognizing faces, clients, colleagues, friends who would have this gossip spread across the city by morning. "I'm making a scene?" Daniel leaned back, his voice rising just enough to carry to the surrounding tables. He wanted witnesses, He wanted the world to see. Let's talk about scenes, shall we? You're wearing the La Perla lingerie I bought you for Valentine's Day. I can see the lace strap from here. Interesting choice for a work meeting. You're wearing Chanel No. 5, the perfume I bought you for Christmas, the one you save for special occasions. Your wedding ring, the one that cost me 3 months' salary 8 years ago, the one you promised to never take off. Where is it, Jessica? In your purse? Jessica's hand moved involuntarily to her bare finger, that small gesture confirming everything Daniel already knew. The tan line was still visible, a ghost of promises broken. The restaurant had gone silent in their section. Other diners watched with the fascination of Romans at the Colosseum, that particular human hunger for witnessing the spectacular destruction of others' lives. Several had phones out, the modern world's way of preserving spectacle for posterity. Daniel stood slowly, his movement drawing every eye. He addressed the room with the same charisma that had convinced investors to pour millions into his dreams, the same presence that commanded stages at tech conferences worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting your evening. I know you came here for overpriced steaks and quiet conversation, not dinner theater. Just discovered my wife's definition of mandatory overtime differs significantly from mine. Please enjoy your meals. The show's just getting started. And don't worry about the check. Drinks are on me tonight. He pulled out his phone, the device that had made him millions, and switched to Facebook Live with practiced ease. The screen lit up with his face, composed despite the earthquake in his chest, professional despite the personal apocalypse unfolding. Hey everyone, Daniel Reeves here, coming to you live from the Capitol Grill in downtown. Beautiful Tuesday evening in January, and I just ran into my wife Jessica working hard on her. What was it again, honey? The Henderson account? The viewer count began its inevitable climb. 50, 200, 500. Comments flooded in like digital rapids, a cascade of shock and disbelief from their social circle. Daniel, what's happening? Is this real? Oh my God, Jessica? Bro, turn off the camera! Holy shit, is this actually happening? Jessica lunged across the table for his phone. Stop it! Turn it off! Daniel, please! Daniel stepped back smoothly, his years of martial arts training serving him in an unexpected way. Don't touch me. You lost that right when you decided our marriage was worth less than whatever this is. When you looked me in the eye this morning and lied. When you kissed me goodbye knowing you were coming here. The viewer count hit 1,000. Friends, family, business associates, all witnessing the public cremation of a marriage that had seemed perfect from the outside. Chapter 6. The Digital Crucifixion. Anthony Blackwood rose from his seat, trying to salvage some dignity from the situation. His composed facade was cracking like ice under pressure. I think I should go. This is between you and your wife. Sit down. Daniel's voice carried the authority of a man who had built empires from nothing, who had stared down venture capitalists and hostile takeover attempts. We're not done. You see, Tony, you knew she was married. The tan line on her finger is still visible. The way she nervously touched her throat when I appeared, that's her tell when she's guilty. You've probably seen it before during your mentoring sessions. So you're not some innocent bystander who got caught in marital crossfire. You're a knowing participant in the destruction of a marriage. Daniel turned the camera on Anthony, broadcasting his face to what was now 1,500 viewers. What's your name for the people watching? Full name, please. They deserve to know who entertained their friend's wife. Anthony's mumbled, Anthony Blackwood was barely audible, but the live stream caught it. Anthony Blackwood, everyone. Managing partner at Hartley, Blackwood & Associates. Married to Caroline Blackwood for 23 years, if LinkedIn is accurate. 2 kids in college, Harvard and Yale, very impressive. The man who's been mentoring my wife. Tell us, Tony. Can I call you Tony? How long has this mentorship involved hand-holding and champagne dinners? How long have you been helping Jessica with her professional development? The viewer count hit 2,000. Comments scrolled faster than the eye could read. Jessica's family members were joining, their shock documented in real time. Margaret Sullivan, Jessica's mother. Jessica Marie Sullivan Reeves, what is going on? Call me immediately. Rachel Sullivan, Jessica's sister. Jess, please tell me this isn't what it looks like. Please. David Sullivan, Jessica's brother. What the actual heck? Daniel, is this real? Caroline Blackwood. Anthony, answer your phone now. Turn it off, Jessica pleaded, tears starting their descent down her perfectly made-up face, leaving trails of mascara like evidence of guilt. Daniel, please. We can talk about this at home. This doesn't have to be public. Like our marriage was public? Daniel's voice was ice. Like our wedding, where you promised in front of 500 people to be faithful? Like the anniversary parties where you hung on my arm and told everyone how lucky you were? Like the company Christmas party last month where you gave that speech about how I was your rock, your foundation? That kind of public? He turned back to the camera. Let's get specific, shall we? Jessica, the weekend conference in Miami last month? The one where you presented on risk management strategies? Was Tony there? Simple question. Jessica's silence was damning. How about the weekend at your sister's that you canceled last minute? Said you had food poisoning. Were you sick, or were you with Tony? Rachel's comment appeared instantly. She said she was throwing up all night. I offered to come take care of her. Food poisoning. Creative. How about our anniversary dinner, Jess? 3 months ago. When you got that emergency call from the Hong Kong office at 8 p.m., you left before dessert. Said the Asian markets were in crisis. Were you handling international crisis management, or just getting international with Tony here? Tom Chen had approached with Marcus, standing close enough to provide silent support. The Hashimoto meeting was forgotten. This was more important. Daniel wasn't alone in this gladiatorial arena. His brothers in arms had his back. Chapter 7. The Confession. The dam broke. Jessica's composure, maintained by threads of hope that this could be contained, finally shattered completely. Yes, okay? Yes! Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? To humiliate me in front of everyone? To destroy my life? Destroy your life? Daniel's laugh was bitter. I'm not the one who decided our marriage vows were suggestions. I'm not the one who's been lying every morning for... How long, Jessica? How long have you been looking me in the eye and lying? How long have I been the fool who believed his wife was working late? Silence stretched between them like a chasm. Anthony, perhaps sensing that truth might minimize damage, or perhaps just tired of the charade, spoke. 6 months. The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. His mind raced through calculations. 6 months, 180 days, give or take. Every morning for 6 months you've kissed me goodbye knowing you were betraying me. Every I love you. Every date night where you seemed distracted. Now I know why. Every time we made love. Jesus Christ, Jessica. We made love last Sunday morning. Were you thinking about him? Comparing us? The live stream exploded. Friends, family, business associates, all witnessing the public cremation of what had seemed like a perfect marriage. Someone tagged Hartley, Blackwood, and Associates HR department. Jessica's company page was being flooded with comments. Anthony's wife was commenting repeatedly, her shock and rage visible in real time. Caroline Blackwood. 6 months? 6 months? You bastard. My lawyer will be in touch. Margaret Sullivan. Jessica, how could you? Daniel is a good man. How could you do this to him? Tom Chen. Bro, we're here. Whatever you need. Linda Morrison, from Daniel's company. I knew something was off. Jessica, you never deserved him. The May? Tradee approached with the careful steps of someone navigating a minefield. Philippe had seen many dramas unfold in his restaurant, but nothing quite like this. Mr. Reeves, I need to ask you to... Daniel handed him a black American Express card without looking away from Jessica. Charge their dinner to this. Whatever they've ordered, whatever they're drinking. And send a bottle of champagne to every table that's had their meal interrupted. Good champagne. My apology for the unscheduled entertainment. Sir, that's very generous, but... Philippe, I've been coming here for 5 years. I've closed deals worth millions at these tables. I've celebrated every major success of my life in this restaurant. Tonight, I'm celebrating the end of a lie. Please, the champagne. He turned back to Jessica, his voice carrying across the now silent restaurant. Here's what happens now. You're going to stand up, gather your things, and leave with Anthony here. Go wherever adulterers go to celebrate their exposure. A motel? His office? I don't care. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., you'll receive a call from Steinberg and Associates. You remember them? The law firm that handled our prenup? The one you had your lawyer review for 3 weeks before signing? The one with the comprehensive infidelity clause you laughed about, said we'd never need because you'd never give me reason to doubt? Chapter 8. The reckoning Jessica stood on unsteady legs, her designer heels suddenly unable to support the weight of her choices. You can't just throw me out! That's our home! I have rights! Rights? Daniel's voice was deadly calm. Let's discuss rights. The house at 47 Meadowbrook Lane? Purchased in 2015, 2 years before we met. Maintained as separate property per our prenuptial agreement, Section 3, Subsection A. The Mercedes you drove here tonight? Also premarital property, purchased in 2016. Titled in my name, insured by my company. Your personal belongings, clothes, jewelry, that collection of first edition books I bought you, those are yours. They'll be in boxes on the lawn by noon tomorrow. I suggest you arrive with a U-Haul. It's supposed to rain tomorrow night. This is cruel. You're being vindictive. Vindictive? Daniel turned to the camera, now showing over 3,000 viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, am I being vindictive? I'm following the legal agreement she signed. I'm giving her what she's earned. The opportunity to start fresh with her true love. Tony, you should be thanking me. I'm removing the last obstacle to your happiness. Anthony was staring at his phone in horror, his face transitioning from composed to catastrophic. The screen showed dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages. This is illegal. You're recording without consent. I'll sue for defamation, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. One-party consent state, counselor. Daniel's smile was sharp. I'm CEO of a tech company. I know privacy laws better than most attorneys. I'm a party to this conversation, making the recording legal. As for defamation, truth is an absolute defense. And everyone just heard you admit that you were entertaining my wife for 6 months. That's not defamation, that's documentation. Daniel turned back to the camera. Oh, and for those just joining, that's Anthony Blackwood, managing partner at Hartley, Blackwood and Associates. Married to Caroline Blackwood for, how long, Tony? 23 years? She seems upset. Check the comments. Caroline Blackwood's latest comment was visible. 23 years. 2 children. You threw it all away for your subordinate? I'm calling my lawyer now. Thanks for the evidence, Daniel. Anthony's phone rang. He declined the call. It rang again immediately, and again. You should probably take that, Daniel suggested. Sounds important. Chapter 9. The Collapse. Tom Chen stepped forward, his presence a silent reminder that Daniel wasn't alone. Marcus flanked his other side. The power dynamic in the restaurant had shifted completely. Anthony Blackwood, who had walked in as a master of the universe, now looked like a man watching his life implode in real time. Gentlemen, Daniel addressed his friends, I apologize for the disruption to our evening. Mr. Hashimoto will have to wait. Some things are more important than money. Family's more important, Tom agreed. We've got your back. Daniel nodded, then turned his attention back to Jessica one final time. Your key won't work when you get home. The locks are being changed as we speak. Your mother says you can stay with her. She also says she's disappointed. Check the comments if you don't believe me. Margaret Sullivan's latest comment was indeed visible. Come home, Jessica. We need to talk. I'm disappointed beyond words. Your father would be ashamed. Jessica's tears were flowing freely now, her carefully applied makeup running in dark rivers down her cheeks. This is so cruel. You're destroying my life over one mistake. One mistake? Daniel's voice rose. One mistake is forgetting an anniversary. One mistake is a drunken kiss at an office party. 6 months of deception, planning, lying. That's not a mistake, Jessica. That's a choice. 1,000 choices every single day to betray the man who loved you. Who would have given you anything? Who did give you everything? The restaurant was transfixed. Other diners had abandoned any pretense of not watching. This was Shakespeare performed live. Othello meets the Social Network, and they had front row seats. And let's be clear about something, Daniel continued, his voice carrying the weight of realization. You weren't just cheating. You were planning your exit, weren't you? The way you've been moving money, the way you've been documenting our arguments, creating a paper trail, you were going to blindside me with divorce papers, claim emotional neglect or some bullshit, and try to take half of everything I built before I ever met you. Jessica's face confirmed what Daniel had just figured out. The pieces clicked into place, her sudden interest in their finances, her questions about his company valuation, her insistence on having copies of all their financial documents for tax purposes. My God, Daniel breathed. You were going to rob me while you were having fun with him. It wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. Chapter 10. The aftermath begins. The maitre d' had returned with a small army of waiters, each carrying champagne to the surrounding tables. The gesture, grand and absurd in the context, somehow fit perfectly. Daniel Reeves was buying drinks for everyone who'd witnessed his marriage die. A toast, Daniel announced, raising a glass of water. He needed to stay sharp. To truth, to clarity, to the end of deception. And to everyone here who now knows that if you eat at Capitol Grill on a Tuesday night, you might see something unforgettable. Some diners raised their glasses, caught up in the surreal moment. Others looked away, uncomfortable with the raw pain on display. But everyone would remember. Everyone would tell this story. Daniel ended the live stream with a final statement. To everyone who watched, who commented, who cared, thank you. Sometimes the hardest truths need witnesses. Sometimes betrayal thrives in shadows and dies in light. I chose light. He pocketed his phone, pulled out his wallet, and left a stack of hundreds on the table. For the inconvenience, he told the hovering waiter. Then to Tom and Marcus. Gentlemen, I need a drink. A real drink. Somewhere that isn't here. As they walked out, Daniel heard Anthony's phone ringing incessantly. Saw Jessica slumped in her chair like a marionette with cut strings. He felt nothing. The numbness that follows catastrophic injury, the body's way of protecting itself from unbearable pain. In the parking lot, Tom asked, You okay? No, Daniel answered honestly. But I will be. First, we need to call Hashimoto and reschedule. Then I need to call my lawyer. Then I need to go home and pack up my wife's things. Then... He paused, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. Then I need to figure out how to live without her. You don't have to do it alone, Marcus said. We've got couches, guest rooms, whatever you need. Daniel smiled, the first genuine expression since he'd seen Jessica in that red dress. I know. That's why I'm going to be okay. Eventually. As they drove away, Daniel's phone exploded with notifications. The video had already been shared hundreds of times. News outlets were calling. Friends were texting. His mother had left 6 voicemails, but Daniel didn't answer any of them. Not yet. First, he had boxes to pack and a life to dismantle. The real aftermath would come tomorrow. Tonight, he just needed to survive until morning. Chapter 11. The Viral Storm. By 3 a.m., Daniel had packed 17 boxes. Jessica's clothes, carefully folded despite his rage. Her jewelry, wrapped in tissue paper because even in his fury, he wasn't petty enough to damage her things. Her books, her photos, her collection of snow globes from every place they'd traveled together. Each item was a small knife, a memory made bitter by betrayal. Tom and Marcus had stayed, helping in silence. They'd ordered pizza that no one ate, made coffee that grew cold, and simply been present while Daniel methodically erased Jessica from his home. The video had crossed 100,000 views. News outlets had picked it up with the fervor reserved for public scandals. Tech CEO's live-streamed confrontation with cheating wife goes viral. The Capitol Grill incident. A marriage ends in real time. Digital age divorce. When social media meets infidelity. Watch. Husband discovers wife's affair. During business dinner. Daniel's phone hadn't stopped ringing. He'd turned off the sound after the 20th call from numbers he didn't recognize. His lawyer had texted, "Don't talk to media. Don't delete anything. See me at 8 a.m. At 4 a.m., sitting on his kitchen floor, surrounded by the detritus of a dismantled life, Daniel finally watched the video himself. It was surreal, seeing it from the outside. His own pain broadcast in high definition, Jessica's tears in 1080p, Anthony's destruction in real time. The comments were a mix of support and judgment. King behavior. Cheaters deserve exposure. This is cruel. He could have handled it privately. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Good riddance. I feel bad for everyone involved. This is just sad. Jessica got what she deserved. 6 months of lies? Nah. But it was the personal messages that hit hardest. Friends sharing their own stories of betrayal. Strangers thanking him for giving them courage to confront their own situations. His sister in California offering to fly out immediately. His mother torn between supporting her son and horror at the public nature of it all. At 5 a.m., Jessica texted from her mother's phone. "The boxes?" Daniel responded, "Front lawn, 11 a.m., bring a truck." "Can we talk?" He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Chapter 12. The Legal Battlefield. David Steinberg's office occupied the top floor of a building that scraped the sky. At 8 a.m. sharp, Daniel sat across from the man who'd crafted his prenuptial agreement 8 years ago, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. "Hell of a way to find out," Steinberg said, sliding coffee across the mahogany desk. "But from a legal perspective, you played it perfectly. The recording is admissible, the confession is clear, and the prenup is airtight." "She was planning to divorce me," Daniel said, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "The forensic accountant you recommended found evidence. She's been moving money, consulting with attorneys, building a case that I was emotionally absent." "Projection," Steinberg diagnosed. "Cheaters often accuse their partners of the very things they're guilty of. Now let's talk strategy." For the next 2 hours, they mapped out the divorce proceedings with military precision. The prenuptial agreement was clear. Infidelity voided any claim to marital assets acquired before the marriage or through Daniel's company. Jessica would get what she brought in and half of the modest joint savings account, roughly $50,000. "She'll fight it," Steinberg warned. "Her lawyer will claim duress, that the live stream constitutes revenge porn, that you've damaged her career prospects. They'll throw everything at the wall hoping something sticks." "Let them," Daniel said. "I want this over. Fast, clean, final." By noon, when Jessica arrived with a U-Haul and her brother, the boxes were arranged on the lawn like monuments to a dead marriage. Daniel watched from his office window as she loaded them, her movements sharp with anger and humiliation. Neighbors pretended not to stare. The local news van that had been circling the block slowed for footage. She tried the front door. The locks had indeed been changed. She rang the doorbell. Daniel didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that lawyers couldn't handle better. Her brother, David Sullivan, shouted up at the window, "You're a bastard, Reeves! A cruel bastard!" Daniel closed the blinds. He had code to review, a company to run, a life to rebuild. The boxes were gone by 2 p.m. So was the last physical trace of Jessica from his life. Chapter 13. The Corporate Fallout. Hartley, Blackwood & Associates prided itself on discretion and ethical standards. Having a managing partner exposed for an affair with a subordinate complete with viral video evidence was not just a scandal, but an existential threat to their reputation. The emergency board meeting convened at 7 a.m. the following Monday. Anthony Blackwood sat at the same conference table where he'd once ruled with unquestioned authority, now facing a firing squad in Armani suits. "The damage to our reputation is incalculable," board chairman Harrison Hartley intoned. "Clients are already threatening to pull accounts." Morrison Industries called this morning. They're moving their entire portfolio to Brennan and Associates. "This is a personal matter," Anthony attempted. "It has nothing to do with my professional capabilities." "You had an affair with a subordinate," Hartley countered. "That's a clear violation of company policy. But more than that, you did it publicly, got caught on live stream, and now our firm is trending on Twitter alongside hashtags like #CapitalGrillScandal and #CheatingCEO. The investigation that followed was swift and damning. Jessica wasn't Anthony's first inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. 2 former employees came forward with similar stories, emboldened by the public nature of this scandal. The pattern was clear. Anthony Blackwood used his position to pursue women who worked for him, dangling promotions and favorable assignments like bait. Within 72 hours, Anthony Blackwood was stripped of his partnership and given 30 days to sell his shares. The vote was unanimous. Jessica's termination came the same day. The official reason was violation of company ethics policy regarding relationships between supervisors and subordinates. The real reason was that clients were threatening to pull their accounts if she remained. In finance, reputation was currency, and Jessica's had been devalued to junk status. She tried to claim wrongful termination, sexual harassment, hostile work environment. Her lawyer, Pamela Morrison, filed a complaint with the EEOC. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emails from her company account planning rendezvous, expense reports for client dinners that were actually romantic dates, and the damning fact that she had received preferential treatment, bonuses, and promotions during the affair. The investigation revealed more. Jessica had been using her position to steer contracts to companies in exchange for kickbacks, funneled through accounts Anthony controlled. What started as an affair had become a corruption scandal. Anthony, seeing the walls closing in, threw Jessica under the bus with the efficiency of a man trying to save himself. His statement to HR claimed Jessica had aggressively pursued him despite his attempts to maintain professional boundaries. He produced selectively edited emails that seemed to support his version, conveniently omitting his own advances and pressure. But the other women's testimonies painted a different picture. Anthony Blackwood was a predator who used his power to collect subordinates like trophies. Jessica was neither the first nor the last, just the one who got caught in the most public way possible. Chapter 14. The Ripple Effect. The Capitol Grill video became more than just a viral moment. It became a cultural touchstone. Within a week, pulling a Daniel Reeves entered the lexicon, meaning to confront betrayal with radical public honesty. The restaurant itself became an unlikely pilgrimage site, with people booking tables specifically to sit where it happened. But the real impact was in the stories that flooded Daniel's inbox. Thousands of people reached out with their own tales of betrayal, of gaslighting, of discovering affairs. Many credited his video with giving them the courage to confront their own situations. One message stood out. "Mr. Reeves, I'm a 34-year-old engineer who discovered my husband's 2-year affair last month. I was going to suffer in silence, try to make it work for the kids. Your video showed me that staying silent only protects the guilty. I filed for divorce yesterday. Thank you for showing me that the truth, however painful, is better than a comfortable lie. Sarah M." Another. I'm Anthony Blackwood's daughter. I'm sorry for what my father did. Your video finally explained why my parents' marriage has been dead for years. My mom is free now, thanks to you. She says to tell you she's grateful. Emma B. Daniel didn't respond to most messages, but he read them all. Each one was a reminder that his personal catastrophe had become something larger. A moment of reckoning for countless relationships built on deception. His business, contrary to what some predicted, thrived. The Hashimoto deal closed successfully after a rescheduled meeting where Mr. Hashimoto himself said, "A man who values truth in his personal life will value it in business. We are honored to partner with you." 3 major VCs reached out within 2 weeks, interested in funding his next venture. His team's morale skyrocketed. They knew their leader would face hard truths rather than hide behind corporate speak. Recruitment became easier as top talent sought to work for the CEO who keeps it real. But success felt hollow in an empty house. Daniel threw himself into work with the fervor of a man outrunning his demons. 18-hour days became normal. He coded until his eyes burned, took meetings until his voice was hoarse, built and rebuilt until exhaustion finally brought dreamless sleep. Chapter 15. Jessica's Downfall. While Daniel's star rose, Jessica's fell with meteoric speed. The financial world was small and gossipy. Everyone had seen the video, shared the memes, discussed the scandal over drinks. Her name was toxic. She applied to firms across the city, then the state, then anywhere that would look at her resume. The rejections were polite but firm. While your qualifications are impressive, we've decided to pursue other candidates. The position has been filled internally. We don't feel you'd be a good cultural fit. The subtext was clear. Nobody wanted to hire the woman from the Capitol Grill video. Her money ran out faster than expected. The $50,000 from the divorce settlement seemed like a fortune until reality hit. Lawyers' fees ate $20,000. Moving costs, storage units, the deposit on a studio apartment in a sketchy neighborhood, it all added up. The lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to on Daniel's success was unsustainable on her own. Her family's support came with conditions. Her mother's disappointment was a weight that pressed down every day. "Your father would be so ashamed," became Margaret Sullivan's refrain. Her siblings were polite but distant, their own reputations tainted by association. Anthony had vanished like smoke. His promises of love, of a future together, of leaving his wife, all evaporated the moment their affair became public. He'd reconciled with Caroline, claiming temporary insanity, a midlife crisis, Jessica's manipulation. He painted himself as the victim so convincingly that some believed him. By month 3, Jessica was working part-time as a bookkeeper for a plumbing company, making barely enough to cover rent. The woman who'd once managed millions now balanced the books for toilet repairs. The irony wasn't lost on her. Therapy helped somewhat. Dr. Patricia Reeves, no relation, specialized in high-profile scandals and their aftermath. In their sessions, Jessica began to unpack the why of her choices. "I felt invisible," she admitted during one session. "Daniel was building empires, changing the world. I was just the wife. Anthony made me feel powerful, desired, important." "And now," Dr. Reeves prompted, "now I see I had power all along. I just used it to destroy everything good in my life." Chapter 16. The Unexpected Meeting. 6 months after the Capitol Grill incident, Daniel was having lunch at a quiet Thai restaurant when he saw her. Jessica sat alone in a corner booth, picking at pad Thai, looking like a shadow of her former self. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by off-the-rack business casual. The confident posture had given way to hunched shoulders. Their eyes met across the restaurant. Time stopped. Daniel had imagined this moment countless times. The cutting remarks he'd deliver, the cold shoulder he'd turn, the victory he'd feel seeing her brought low. But faced with the reality of her obvious misery, he felt nothing. The rage had burned out, leaving only ash. He paid his bill and started to leave. Then, surprising himself, he stopped at her table. Jessica. Daniel. Her voice was small. I eat here sometimes. I'll leave. No need. It's a free country. Silence stretched between them, years of marriage reduced to awkward strangers. I'm sorry, she said finally. I know it doesn't matter. I know you don't care. But I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught. For all of it. For becoming someone who could do that to you. To us. Daniel studied her, this woman he'd once promised to love forever. Are you happy now? With him? Jessica's bitter laugh was answer enough. He threw me under the bus the second things got hard, claimed I seduced him, manipulated him. His wife took him back. They're in couples counseling, working on their marriage. Ironic, right? Karma's a bitch. Yeah. She pushed pad thai around her plate. I heard the company's doing well. The Hashimoto deal. We're fine. Good. That's good. She looked up at him. I know I have no right to ask, but how are you? Really? Daniel considered the question. How was he? Successful beyond measure. Lonely beyond words. Trusted by investors, employees, friends. Unable to trust anyone new with his heart. I'm surviving, he said finally. Building. Moving forward. Dating. Too busy. Don't, Jessica said suddenly. Don't let what I did close you off. You're a good man, Daniel. You deserve someone who sees that, values that, protects that. Don't let my stupidity rob you of that chance. Noted, Daniel said dryly. Life advice from my ex-wife who cheated for 6 months. I'll file that appropriately. Jessica flinched but nodded. Fair. I wasted the best thing in my life. Don't let my waste become yours too. Daniel left without another word, but her words echoed as he drove back to his office. Don't let my waste become yours. Maybe there was wisdom in that, even from the last person he'd take advice from. Chapter 17. The New Beginning. Elena Vasquez was brilliant, beautiful, and had zero patience for bullshit. Daniel met her at a blockchain conference 8 months after the divorce, where she was presenting on applications of distributed ledger technology in pharmaceutical trials. Her presentation was flawless, her command of the subject masterful. But it was what happened after that caught Daniel's attention. A pompous VC tried to mansplain her own technology to her. Elena's response was swift and devastating. I have 2 PhDs from MIT and 16 patents. I don't need you to explain my own work to me. What I need is for you to write a check or get out of my way. Daniel laughed, the first genuine laugh in months. She heard it, turned, and their eyes met. Later, at the conference mixer, she approached him directly. You're the Capital Grille guy. Is that what I'm known for now? Among other things, founded Reeves Technologies, pioneered the double encryption protocol for international transfers, turned a garage startup into a $100 million company. Also publicly humiliated your cheating ex-wife in a live stream that's been viewed 50 million times. You've done your homework. I invest in people, not just companies. I like to know who I'm dealing with. She extended her hand. Dr. Elena Vasquez. I run a biotech startup that's going to revolutionize drug delivery systems. Her handshake was firm, confident. Daniel Reeves. I run a fintech company and apparently a viral video empire. Buy me coffee and tell me about the double encryption protocol. The white paper was fascinating, but light on implementation details. You read my white paper? I read everything interesting. Coffee? Over espresso at a hotel bar that definitely wasn't the Capital Grille, they talked technology, innovation, the future. Elena was sharp, challenging his assumptions, building on his ideas. She was also refreshingly direct about the elephant in the room. So, the video? Regrets? About the marriage or the live stream? The public nature of it. You could have handled it privately. Daniel considered this. I could have. But then Jessica and Anthony would have spun their narrative. She was already planning to paint me as an absent, emotionally unavailable husband. He would have claimed a moment of weakness. They would have controlled the story. The live stream took that power away and gave you a reputation as someone who goes nuclear when crossed. Is that a problem for you? Elena smiled. Actually, it's refreshing. I've dealt with too many men who smile to your face while stabbing you in the back. You're transparent about your boundaries. Cross them at your peril. I respect that. Even if it means I might live stream our first fight. We won't fight in restaurants. Problem solved. They talked until the bar closed, then continued walking the city streets until dawn. By sunrise, Daniel knew something had shifted. The armor around his heart, forged in betrayal and tempered in pain, had developed a crack. I should warn you, he said, as they waited for their respective Ubers. I'm complicated. Trust issues, workaholic tendencies, plus the whole internet fame thing. I should warn you, Elena countered. I'm ambitious. I sign prenups without drama. I actually work late when I say I'm working late. And I think the Capitol Grill is overpriced and pretentious. Marry me, Daniel said, then laughed at himself. Sorry, too soon. How about dinner first? Not at the Capitol Grill. Never at the Capitol Grill. Their first date was sushi at a hole-in-the-wall place Elena knew. Their second was cooking together at his house, the first time he'd entertained since Jessica left. Their third was attending a charity gala where everyone recognized him, whispered about him, wondered about the woman on his arm. Elena handled it with grace. When someone inevitably brought up the incident, she redirected with smooth precision. That's ancient history. Let's talk about the future. Did you know Daniel's company is about to revolutionize international banking? She was magnificent. Chapter 18. The Attempted Reconciliation. 1 year and 3 months after the Capitol Grill incident, Jessica made her last play. She'd lost everything: career, reputation, social standing. Anthony had completely severed contact. Her family relationships were strained. She was seeing a therapist, attending a support group for women who made terrible choices, and slowly rebuilding her life from the ashes. The email came on a Thursday afternoon. Subject: One last thing, Daniel. I know I have no right to contact you. I know you've moved on. Elena seems wonderful. You deserve that happiness. But I have information about the Hashimoto deal that you need to know. When I was with Anthony, I overheard something. His firm was representing a competitor who's planning a challenge to your patents. They have inside information documents that were leaked from your company during our divorce proceedings. Anthony was playing both sides. I have proof, screenshots, emails, recordings I made for insurance. I know you have no reason to trust me, but this could destroy everything you've built. If you're willing to meet, I'll be at the Starbucks on 5th Street tomorrow at 2 p.m. If not, I'll leave the USB drive with your lawyer. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for money. I just want to do one right thing. Jessica Daniel stared at the email for a long moment. He forwarded it to his lawyer, his security team, and Elena. It could be a trap, Elena said, reading over his shoulder at breakfast. Or genuine redemption. What does your gut say? That I need to know what she knows. If there's a threat to the company, then go, but take backup. The next afternoon, Daniel arrived at Starbucks with Mike from security positioned nearby and his lawyer on speed dial. Jessica was already there, and the change was stark. Gone was the polished executive who had commanded boardrooms and broken hearts. This Jessica looked older, worn down by consequences, but also somehow more real. She dressed simply, spoke quietly, and made no attempt to recreate her former glamour. Thank you for coming, she started. You have 5 minutes. She slid a USB drive across the table. Everything's on there. Anthony was double-dealing. His firm was feeding information to Matsuda Industries while representing you in the Hashimoto merger. They were planning to challenge your patents after the deal closed, claim prior art based on documents they obtained illegally. Daniel pocketed the drive. Why give this to me? Jessica's laugh was bitter but honest. Because I've lost everything else. My career, my reputation, my marriage, my self-respect. Maybe doing one right thing will help me sleep better. Or maybe I just want Anthony to burn the way I've burned. Does the motivation matter if the information saves your company? I suppose not. I'm seeing a therapist, Jessica continued. She says I have narcissistic tendencies, that I confused attention with love, validation with value, that I destroyed my life chasing a feeling of importance that was already mine if I just looked for it in the right places. And now? Now I work at a nonprofit, helping women leave abusive relationships. Ironic, right? I, who emotionally abused the best man I ever knew now, counsel women on recognizing toxic behavior. But maybe that's exactly why I'm good at it. I know what toxicity looks like from the inside. Daniel studied her. This was not the woman he'd married, nor the woman he'd divorced. This was someone new, forged in the fire of consequences. I hope you find peace, he said finally, meaning it. I hope you find happiness, she replied. Real happiness. Not just success or vindication, but the kind of joy we had in the beginning, before I poisoned it with my need for more. As Daniel stood to leave, Jessica added, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But I want you to know that loving you was the only real thing I did in a life full of performance. I just didn't know it until I'd thrown it away. Daniel left without responding. The USB drive did indeed contain damaging evidence of corporate espionage. His legal team used it to neutralize the threat and file charges against Anthony's firm. The scandal that followed destroyed what was left of Anthony Blackwood's reputation and resulted in criminal charges. Daniel never spoke to Jessica again, but he heard she continued her work at the nonprofit, slowly rebuilding a life based on service rather than selfishness. Sometimes redemption isn't about getting back what you lost. It's about becoming someone who wouldn't lose it in the first place. Chapter 19. The Wedding That Healed. 2 years and 3 months after the Capitol Grill incident, Daniel Reeves married Dr. Elena Vasquez in a ceremony that was everything his first wedding wasn't. Instead of 500 guests and society photographers, they had 50 people who truly mattered. Instead of a country club draped in flowers that cost more than a car, they chose Elena's family ranch in Colorado, with wildflowers and mountain views that money couldn't buy. The guest list was carefully curated. Only those who had stood by them, who understood that love wasn't about performance, but presence. Tom Chen was best man. Marcus Rodriguez and 3 other close friends rounded out the groomsmen. Elena's sister Maria was maid of honor, flanked by her research partners who'd become her closest friends. The ceremony itself was simple, honest, stripped of pretense. They wrote their own vows, and Daniel's were characteristic of the man he'd become. Elena, I stand before you not as a perfect man, but as a truthful one. I've learned that love isn't about grand gestures or public declarations. It's about small truths, daily choices, the decision to be real even when reality isn't pretty. I promise to give you my truth, always. To trust you with my failures as well as my successes. To build with you not just a life, but a foundation that can weather any storm. I promise to never take you to the Capitol Grill on a Tuesday. The last line drew laughter from everyone who knew the story. Elena's vows were equally direct. Daniel, I fell in love with your honesty before I fell in love with you. In a world full of people managing their image, you chose authenticity. You showed me that strength isn't about being invulnerable. It's about being vulnerable with the right person. I promise to be that person. To guard your trust like the treasure it is. To build our empire together, line by line, truth by truth. And I promise to always tell you if I'm actually working late. Tom Chen's best man speech brought down the house. 3 years ago, I watched my best friend face the worst night of his life. But here's what many don't know. That night saved my marriage. Watching Daniel refuse to accept deception made me realize I was heading down a dangerous path with a colleague. I went home, confessed everything to my wife, and we rebuilt from honesty. We're stronger now because Daniel showed us that comfortable lies are just delayed explosions. Elena, you're not just marrying a man. You're marrying a walking reminder to live with integrity. More stories followed. Marcus credited Daniel's example with giving him courage to leave a toxic business partnership. Linda from security had finally reported sexual harassment from a superior, inspired by Daniel's refusal to let wrongdoing hide in shadows. Even the wedding photographer shared that she'd ended an engagement after realizing she was settling for someone who didn't value truth. Elena's speech as the bride was characteristic. I used to think Daniel's video was about revenge. Now I understand it was about revelation. He revealed not just his ex-wife's betrayal, but a fundamental truth, that we all have a choice between comfortable deception and uncomfortable honesty. Daniel chose honesty. I choose Daniel. And I choose to build our life on that same foundation of truth, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. The reception was intimate, joyful, free of the performative elements that had marked Daniel's first wedding. No 5-tier cake that looked better than it tasted. Just Elena's grandmother's recipe, baked with love. No 12-piece orchestra, just a local band that played music people actually danced to. No speeches about success and status, just friends sharing real moments, real laughter, real connection. As they danced their first dance to a Spanish guitar version of At Last, Elena's choice, perfect in its simplicity, Daniel whispered, "Any regrets about marrying the Capitol Grill guy?" "Only that we didn't meet sooner," Elena replied. "Think of all the time we wasted being with the wrong people." "Not wasted," Daniel corrected. "Prepared. I needed to learn the cost of deception to appreciate the value of truth. You needed to build your company to know you didn't need anyone else's validation. We met when we were ready." "Look at you being philosophical." "It's the mountain air. Or the tequila. Possibly both." They laughed, and in that laughter was the sound of healing, of futures being built on foundations that could actually bear weight. Chapter 20. The ripples continue. The Capitol Grill incident had become more than just Daniel's story. It had become a cultural phenomenon. Universities taught it in ethics classes as a case study in truth versus privacy. Therapists used it to discuss the impact of public shame. Business schools analyzed the PR implications and how Daniel's radical honesty had actually strengthened his brand. 3 years post-incident, a documentary filmmaker reached out wanting to tell the complete story. Daniel initially declined, but Elena encouraged him to consider it. "Your story helped thousands of people," she argued. "Why not let it help more?" The resulting documentary, Truth at All Costs, The Capitol Grill Incident, featured interviews with Daniel, reflecting on the journey from betrayal to rebuilding Tom Chen and Marcus Rodriguez, on friendship and loyalty Caroline Blackwood, on discovering her husband's pattern of affairs. Several people who'd made major life changes after seeing the video therapists discussing the psychology of public confrontation. Even Philippe, the maitre d' from Capitol Grill, on how the incident changed the restaurant's reputation, notably absent. Jessica and Anthony, both of whom declined to participate. The documentary's most powerful moment came from an unexpected source. A woman named Sarah Mitchell shared how she'd been trapped in an abusive marriage, gaslighted into believing she was crazy for suspecting affairs. Seeing Daniel's video gave her the courage to hire a private investigator, gather evidence, and leave safely. "He showed me that the truth has power," she said. "That you don't have to suffer in silence to protect someone who doesn't protect you. His worst night became my liberation." The documentary premiered at Sundance to standing ovations. Daniel and Elena attended, walking the red carpet with the surreal experience of celebrity born from personal catastrophe. "How does it feel?" a reporter asked. To have your private pain become public inspiration? Daniel considered the question. If my worst night helps even one person find their truth, then it was worth it. Pain shared can become purpose. That's the unexpected gift of going viral. You discover you're not alone. Chapter 21. The Full Circle. 5 years after the Capitol Grill incident, Daniel's life had transformed beyond recognition. Reeves Technologies had gone public with a valuation of $2 billion. He and Elena had welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Sophia, who had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn streak. Their son Miguel followed 18 months later. The company culture Daniel built reflected his values: radical transparency, accountability, and the understanding that personal integrity and professional success were inseparable. Employee reviews included 360-degree feedback. Mistakes were addressed directly but fairly. The company handbook explicitly stated, "We value truth over comfort, growth over ego, and integrity over profit." It worked. Reeves Technologies was consistently rated as one of the best places to work in tech. Turnover was minimal. Innovation flourished in an environment where people could be real. Daniel had also become an unexpected advocate for betrayed spouses. He didn't seek the role, but when people reached out, and they did, constantly, he offered support. He funded a nonprofit called Truth After Betrayal that provided legal resources for spouses discovering affairs, helping them document evidence and understand their rights. One afternoon, while reviewing applications for the nonprofit's board, a name stopped him cold: Jessica Sullivan. She'd gone back to her maiden name. Her application was thorough, professional. She'd been working at a domestic violence shelter for 3 years, had gotten certified in crisis counseling, and wanted to use her experience to help others. Her personal statement was brutally honest. "I am the woman from the Capitol Grill video. I betrayed my husband, destroyed my marriage, and lost everything. But in losing everything, I found something: accountability. I've spent 5 years in therapy understanding why I made the choices I did. I've worked to rebuild not my reputation. That ship has sailed, but my character. I know I'm the last person who should be helping betrayed spouses. I also might be the exact right person, someone who understands the devastation from both sides. I don't expect forgiveness or acceptance. I simply want to use my worst choices to help others make better ones." Daniel stared at the application for a long time. Then he forwarded it to the board with a simple note: "Consider on merit alone." The board voted. Jessica was accepted. Their first board meeting, where both attended, was surreal. Jessica arrived early, chose a seat at the far end of the table, and focused on her notes. When Daniel entered, their eyes met briefly. He nodded. She nodded back. Nothing more was needed. She proved to be an excellent board member, insightful, dedicated, unflinchingly honest about the cheater's perspective in ways that helped the organization better serve its mission. She never sought personal interaction with Daniel, never presumed on their shared history. She simply did the work. Chapter 22. The Ultimate Test. Daniel's true test came not from Jessica, but from temptation in a different form. As Reeves Technologies grew, so did the opportunities for the kind of ethical compromises that had destroyed his first marriage. A brilliant programmer named Alaya joined his team, reminiscent of Jessica in her ambition and intelligence. During a conference in Tokyo after too much sake and the intoxication of closing a massive deal, she made her interest clear. "Your wife is in America," she said, her hand on his arm. "What happens in Tokyo?" "Stays on my conscience forever," Daniel finished, removing her hand gently but firmly. "I'm flattered, but I'm married. Happily. That means something to me. Even after what happened. You don't think you're owed a little flexibility?" "What I'm owed is the right to look my wife and children in the eye without shame. That's worth more than any momentary pleasure." He left the bar, called Elena immediately. "I need to tell you something." The programmer made a pass, Elena guessed. Aaliyah? I figured she might. You're rich, powerful, and have that whole wounded but strong thing going. How are you so calm about this? Because you're calling me at 3 a.m. Tokyo time to tell me about it. Because I trust you. Because you chose truth even when it's uncomfortable. That's who you are now. I love you. I love you too. Fire Aaliyah when you get back. Already drafting the termination paperwork. This became another defining moment. Word spread through the company that the CEO had immediately shut down in advance and removed the person from his team. It reinforced the culture. Integrity wasn't just expected of employees. It started at the top. Chapter 23. The Next Generation. As Sophia grew old enough to understand, she began asking questions about why Daddy was sometimes recognized in public, why people sometimes whispered and pointed, why there were certain restaurants they never visited. Daddy, why did that man ask for a selfie? She asked one day after a stranger had approached them at the park. He said you're famous. Daniel and Elena had prepared for this moment. They'd discussed how to explain the past in age-appropriate ways without burdening their children with adult complexities. Sometimes people become known for moments in their lives, Daniel explained, pushing Sophia on the swing. Daddy had a difficult moment that many people saw, and it helped them with their own difficult moments. Was it when you were sad? Sophia, with a child's intuition, had sensed the undercurrent. Yes, sweetheart, I was very sad. But that sadness led me to Mommy, and to you and Miguel. Sometimes difficult things lead to beautiful things. Like when my tower falls down and I build a better one? Exactly like that. As the children grew, Daniel and Elena modeled the transparency they valued. They argued in front of their kids, not screaming matches, but respectful disagreements resolved with communication. They admitted mistakes, apologized when wrong, and showed that love wasn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of honesty. The Capitol Grill itself had embraced its unexpected fame. Philippe, still the maitre d', had watched reservations spike after the incident. The restaurant added a small plaque to table 47. The truth table, where honesty was served alongside the steaks. It became a pilgrimage site for people facing their own crossroads of truth. Chapter 24. 10 years later. A decade after the incident that changed everything, Daniel stood before a packed auditorium at Stanford Business School. He'd been invited to give the keynote address on leadership in the age of transparency. The irony wasn't lost on him. The worst night of his life had become a teaching moment for future business leaders. 10 years ago, he began, I thought success meant building a company worth millions. I thought love meant never having reason to doubt. I thought reputation meant managing how others saw you. I was wrong on all counts. He clicked to a slide showing the view count of the Capitol Grill video. 127 million views across all platforms. This is what failure looks like in the digital age. Public, permanent, painful, but also powerful. Because failure, when faced honestly, becomes foundation. He talked about rebuilding, not just his company, which had grown to a $5 billion valuation, but his capacity for trust. About meeting Elena, about choosing vulnerability over walls. About the thousands of messages from people who'd found courage in his catastrophe. Leadership isn't about being perfect, it's about being real. It's about facing hard truths publicly when necessary, privately when possible, but always directly. It's about understanding that your worst moment doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. A student raised her hand. Mr. Reeves, do you ever regret the live stream? Couldn't you have handled it privately? Daniel had answered this question hundreds of times, but he considered it anew each time. Privacy would have been more comfortable. But comfort and truth rarely coexist. My ex-wife was already building a narrative where I was the villain. The live stream prevented that narrative from taking hold. It was brutal, yes, but it was also honest. And honesty, I've learned, is the foundation of everything worthwhile. Another student. What happened to your ex-wife? She rebuilt her life. Last I heard, she was running a nonprofit, helping others learn from her mistakes. People can change, grow, become better versions of themselves. Redemption is possible, even if reconciliation isn't. After the talk, a young man approached. Mr. Reeves, I wanted to thank you. 5 years ago, I was the Anthony in someone else's story. Seeing your video made me realize what I was doing. I ended the affair, confessed to my wife, and we rebuilt our marriage. We're stronger now because you showed me the cost of deception. These moments still surprise Daniel, the ripple effects of one terrible night spreading far beyond what he could have imagined. That evening, he called Elena from his hotel room. How are the kids? Sophia won her debate competition arguing that radical honesty is essential in the digital age. I wonder where she gets that from. Her brilliant mother, obviously. Miguel asked why we never eat at Capital Grill. I told him it's because their steaks are overpriced. True enough? When do you get home? Tomorrow afternoon. Want to grab dinner? Maybe somewhere with reasonable prices and no traumatic memories? It's a date. I love you. I love you too. As Daniel ended the call, he reflected on the strange journey his life had taken. The Capitol Grill incident had been a nuclear bomb in his personal life, but from the ashes had grown something stronger, more authentic, more real than what existed before. Chapter 25. The documentary sequel. 15 years after the original incident, the filmmaker who'd created Truth at All Costs approached Daniel about a follow-up documentary. The aftermath, 15 years later, would explore the long-term impacts of viral moments on all parties involved. This time, Jessica agreed to participate. The interview was conducted separately. Daniel and Jessica hadn't been in the same room since the board meetings years earlier. But their stories, told in parallel, created a powerful narrative about consequences, growth, and the possibility of redemption without reconciliation. Jessica's segment was particularly powerful. I wake up every day knowing I'm the villain in someone else's story. That's my burden to carry. But I've tried to use that villainy constructively. I've counseled hundreds of people on the brink of affairs. I show them my story and say, this is where that path leads. Some listen, some don't. But every person who chooses honesty over deception is a small redemption for me. She talked about her work with betrayed spouses, the irony of it, the necessity of it. Who better to help them understand the cheater's mindset than someone who's been there? I can tell them what their partners are thinking, how they're justifying it, what signs to look for. I'm proof that cheaters aren't monsters. We're humans who make monstrous choices. Understanding that is the first step to healing. Daniel's segment focused on building after betrayal. People think the hardest part was the public humiliation. It wasn't. The hardest part was learning to trust again. Elena jokes that I asked for her phone passcode on our third date. She's not wrong, but she understood. She gave it to me without hesitation and said, I have nothing to hide. That's when I knew she was different. The documentary also featured Caroline Blackwood, now a successful divorce attorney specializing in infidelity cases, Tom Chen and his wife, whose marriage had grown stronger after his near affair. Several of the people who'd shared their stories in the original documentary, showing how their lives had evolved. Philippe from the Capitol Grill, discussing how the restaurant had become an unlikely symbol of truth-telling. But the most powerful moment came from an unexpected source, Anthony Blackwood. Now in his late 60s, disbarred, living quietly in Florida, Anthony had agreed to one interview. He looked older, humbled by time and consequence. I was a serial cheater, he admitted. Jessica wasn't the first or the last. The Capitol Grill incident forced me to face what I was. A man who used power to take what he wanted without considering the cost. I destroyed my marriage, my career, my reputation. But more than that, I destroyed trust. Jessica's, Caroline's, my children's. That's the real price of deception. Not what you lose, but what you force others to lose in you. He talked about his attempts at redemption, therapy, volunteer work, letters of apology that mostly went unanswered. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want people to know that even the villain in the story can recognize his villainy. Maybe that helps someone else choose differently. The documentary ended with parallel shots. Daniel at home with Elena and their children, building Lego castles and laughing. Jessica at her nonprofit, counseling a woman who just discovered her husband's affair. Anthony alone in his apartment, writing in a journal. Caroline in her law office, helping another betrayed spouse find justice. The final words came from Daniel. The Capitol Grill incident taught me that rock bottom can be a foundation. That public shame can become private strength. That the worst night of your life might just be the preparation for the best years that follow. Truth costs everything, but lies cost more. Chapter 26. The Legacy. 20 years after that Tuesday night at the Capitol Grill, Daniel Reeves's story had become legend in business schools, therapy sessions, and dinner table conversations around the world. The video itself had been viewed over 200 million times, spawning countless reaction videos, think pieces, and debates about privacy, revenge, and the price of truth in the digital age. Reeves Technologies had become one of the largest fintech companies in the world, with a market cap of $50 billion. But more importantly, it had maintained its culture of radical transparency. Employee handbooks at major corporations now included Reeves principles, guidelines for maintaining integrity in both personal and professional life. Daniel and Elena's children had grown into remarkable adults. Sophia, now 18, was heading to MIT to study computer science and ethics. Miguel, 16, had inherited his mother's scientific mind and his father's truth-telling nature. Both had grown up understanding that their father's fame came from his worst moment transformed into his greatest teaching. "Dad," Sophia asked one evening as the family prepared her graduation party, "do you think you and Jessica could have worked it out if she'd just told you the truth when it started?" Daniel considered this. Elena, chopping vegetables nearby, stayed quiet but alert. "Maybe," Daniel said finally. "Truth creates options. Lies eliminate them. If she'd come to me 6 months earlier and said she was unhappy, that she'd developed feelings for someone else, we could have tried counseling. We could have divorced amicably. We could have made choices based on reality instead of deception. But once the lies started, each one made the next one necessary. By the time I found them at the restaurant, there were too many lies to untangle." "But then you wouldn't have met Mom," Miguel pointed out. "True," Daniel smiled at Elena. "Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things, but that doesn't make the worst things good. It just means we can build something better from the rubble." That night, as they celebrated Sophia's graduation, Daniel found himself reflecting on the strange turns life takes. The Capitol Grill video had made him infamous, then famous, then something more complex, a symbol of what happens when we refuse to accept comfortable lies. Jessica had sent a graduation card for Sophia through the nonprofit. She'd kept track of the Reeves family from a respectful distance. The card was simple. "Congratulations on your graduation. May you always have the courage to tell the truth and the wisdom to do it kindly. J." Daniel showed it to Elena, who read it thoughtfully. "She's grown," Elena observed. "We all have," Daniel replied. "That's the thing about public catastrophe. It forces growth or destruction. There's no middle ground." "No regrets?" Elena asked, echoing her question from their wedding day years ago. "None," Daniel said firmly. "The path was brutal, but it led me here. To you. To them," he gestured to their children. "To a life built on truth instead of pretense. I wouldn't change a thing." Epilogue. The final frame. The Capitol Grill still stands at the corner of Madison and 52nd, still serves overpriced steaks to people making deals and breaking hearts. Table 47 still bears its small plaque, though few remember why anymore. Philippe retired. but his successor maintains the tradition of excellent service and discretion, most of the time. Daniel Reeves, now in his late 50s, still runs his company with the same principles that rebuilt his life: radical honesty, direct communication, and the understanding that integrity isn't about being perfect, but about being real. He speaks at conferences, mentors young entrepreneurs, and occasionally still gets recognized as the Capitol Grill guy. Elena Vasquez Reeves has revolutionized drug delivery systems, earning a Nobel Prize nomination and proving that brilliance and integrity can coexist. Their marriage, built on transparency and trust, has become its own quiet legend among their friends. Proof that second chances can surpass first loves when built on stronger foundations. Jessica Sullivan runs one of the most successful nonprofits for betrayed spouses in the country. She never remarried, choosing instead to focus on service and redemption. Her TED Talk, The Cheater's Guide to Helping the Betrayed, has been viewed 50 million times. She lives quietly, works tirelessly, and has found a different kind of happiness in helping others avoid her mistakes. Anthony Blackwood died of a heart attack at 72, alone but not unmourned. His children, who had eventually forgiven if not forgotten, spoke at his funeral about the father he'd been before power corrupted him. His ex-wife Caroline, now a judge, did not attend but sent flowers with a card. For the man you could have been. The Capitol Grill incident has become more than just a viral moment. It's become a cultural touchstone, a modern parable about truth in the age of social media. Business ethics professors teach it. Marriage counselors reference it. Parents use it as a cautionary tale about the importance of honesty. But for Daniel, it remains simpler than all that. It was the night his life exploded and the night his real life began. It was the worst thing that ever happened to him and the catalyst for everything good that followed. It was the price of living a lie and the cost of telling the truth. On quiet evenings when the children are asleep and Elena is reading beside him, Daniel sometimes thinks about that Tuesday night 2 decades ago. He remembers the walk across the restaurant, the weight of his phone in his hand, the moment of decision between handling betrayal privately or publicly. He chose publicly. He chose truth. He chose the harder path that led to a better destination. And in the end, that made all the difference. Some stories end with reconciliation. Some end with revenge. This one ends with something rarer and more valuable: redemption for all parties, just not together. It ends with lives rebuilt on foundations of truth, with lessons learned and shared, with the understanding that our worst moments don't define us. How we rise from them does. The Capitol Grill still serves overpriced steaks. Marriages still fail. Hearts still break. But sometimes, in the intersection of pain and honesty, in the space between betrayal and rebuilding, people find the courage to tell the truth. And sometimes, that truth sets everyone free. The end.